Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Weekend Wrap-Up. I'm David Thomas. With me is Mr. Joshua Blevins. Josh, it's good to see you again this morning.
Yeah, good to see you as well, David.
Yeah, it's May the 18th, and this past week we've had a lot of news that's jumped out at us, and we're going to have to...
I thought it was kind of quiet. I didn't think we had anything to talk about today.
Well, we've got quite a bit to talk about. But before we do, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Dennis Young Insurance. We appreciate him. Let's pause, and we'll be right back.
Yeah.
With the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since 1988.
All right, welcome back to the Weekend Wrap-Up here on Shelbyville Now. Mr. Josh, you've got a lot of stuff that we need to cover today. What's first on our agenda this morning?
We're going to start in the city this morning. There were no public city meetings, but Monday evening, Mayor Carroll came and spoke before the Bedford County Republican Party.
Right.
And he gave a good talk on he actually started on one side of the city and worked his way all the way around and without paperwork or notes or anything. He knew every development going on in the city, covered every single one of them.
Okay.
And obviously we don't have time to cover all that because he spoke for about 40 minutes. But he did have one interesting thing to say. We've been watching the Duck Sand project, and he had a little tidbit in there that I thought we'd play a little clip from just to talk about for a minute.
All right, let's take a listen.
Of course, Duxon Electra, the company that's out there in the North Business Park that was joined on by the county and the city. They're still working, trying to get that completed. Turner Construction, I think, was doing all of the outside walls and things like that. We've run into a few issues where we had to do a stop work order for a little bit because there was a contractor out there working with no permit. And so the city of Shelbyville our codes department said, you got to stop work right now or start paying the fine. So they stopped it. They have since that point gotten their permit and they've gone back to work. We're watching that close and we're wanting the state to come in, and the state doesn't want to come in on the water and all those kind of things. And I think the water supply will be B-cut instead of Shelbyville Power and water on that. So we're looking at all that. We want to make sure everything is done properly because you can't fix it after the fact. And so we want to do that.
Oh, there's a lot being said right there, Josh.
There was a lot being said. This is more of a tease than an actual news item. We had mentioned this before.
Right.
There have been some stop work orders that have not been mentioned in any media that we've seen on this Duck Sand project. The city issued some. They're trying to get the state involved. There's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes there, and we're expecting more big news on that project within the next few weeks. And we just want people to be aware that there are things moving behind the scenes there, and that we'll definitely have more coverage as soon as it's available.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we're going to hear something this week, a little bit more about it.
Right.
And I know there are a lot of growing concerns, and it sounds like Mayor Carroll is concerned, and the state, he wants the state involved in this to make sure we do it all right. And moving forward, we don't want to back up and have a major problem down the road. So.
No, we need to do it right on the front end for sure. So, and the city's on top of it, and I think the state is getting more on top of it. So hopefully we'll have more news on that coming, going forward. But other than that, no city public meetings anyways. None I was invited to, none that made none that made the paper or were published anywhere that I saw. So we'll have a lot more city stuff coming up in the upcoming weeks.
Right.
But obviously the big item of the week was the county commission meeting, Tuesday evening, 7:00. Lot to talk about with that meeting. Before we get too far into it, I just wanted to make a couple points. Some of them we made last week. We're live here. We're going to say a lot of things. We're not perfect. We might make a mistake on something we say here today, David. It's possible. Yeah. We are more than open to any correction on anything we say. If there's anybody from the county, from the mayor down to a commissioner, anybody that would like to come on live and speak with us,
it's always open.
We're always open, recorded live. I tried to get the county mayor at the beginning of the year to do kind of a year-end wrap-up, and we just weren't able to make a time work for him.
Right.
But
well, maybe we can. So, maybe we can.
Yeah, we're open to that. So, and we're going to mention some names here today of different commissioners, different things that went on Tuesday night. We don't have anything personal against any of the commissioners. We're just wanting to shed light on things that go on that normally people just out living their life don't know what happens.
Right.
All these meetings are A, open to the public, and B, live streamed, especially at the county level.
Right.
But what happens there is these live streams, nobody watches them.
Right.
So we have quote unquote transparency in the government, but a normal county commission meeting, if you had 100 people that watched it out of, what do we have, 52,000 in the county?
Yes.
I mean, that's, a small percentage of people see what goes on behind the scenes. So that's why we did a lot of clips this week. We did maybe a little photo collage. We did a couple things just to shine a little bit more transparency, a little more light, get some of what goes on in your county government out into the public,
right,
where it may not be seen.
Because our government is supposed to be for the people, by the people.
Absolutely. They represent us. And if you don't know what they're doing, you just assume, before I was deeply involved in going to all these meetings, I just assumed they're up there, they're representing me, they're doing I voted for them, they care what I think, and they want to do what they want to do what's best for me. And I think they do want to do what they think is best for us. But if they don't hear from you, they don't know your opinion or what So
I thought this week we did get some awareness to what was going on.
I think there's awareness, and the opening of the meeting was great. We actually had people showed up, people
gave their opinion,
voiced their opinion directly to the commission. You don't normally see that at our county commission meetings. We have a public comment period before all of them, and generally it's looking around and, hey, does anybody want to talk? And it's nobody wants to say anything. So it was great to see people actually showing up and speaking out. So we opened with the public comment, and then they had a little presentation for Chris White. He won an award.
Yes, he did, and that's something we missed putting out on Facebook.
Right.
And with all the other stuff going on, it got lost in the shuffle. But that was a highlight of the meeting.
That was great. Yeah. So and kudos to Chris for the work he's done in our planning for the county. But then we moved straight into into a resolution. The resolution of the night, that was what all the people showed up to talk about. It was introduced by the mayor, and immediately from the floor, we got a motion to approve shouted out. Right. So that is not the correct protocol for that.
They have to be recognized first.
Yeah, right? You're supposed to be recognized by the chair. From the bylaws for the county commission, Section E, gaining the floor. In all cases, the member who shall first raise his or her hand and address the chairperson shall be entitled to speak first. When two or more members shall raise their hands and address the chairperson at the same time, the chairperson shall name the member who shall speak first by the other member, followed by the other member.
Right.
So that didn't happen. So the initial motion to approve was actually out of order, and should have been called as such by either the chair or the parliamentarian.
Right.
And it was just, one of those things that slid by. Shout out to Commissioner Bill Anderson. He actually kind of figured out what was going on there and missed it a little bit. He brought up later in the same session that he was noticing that there were some irregularities on how motions were being handled. He thought the discussion was supposed to happen before the motion was made, which that was not correct. But what has been happening is we've been having shouting out from the floor, motion to approve without being recognized. And that's not the appropriate way to do that. And that needs to be cleaned up. There's a lot of those procedural things that we'll mention here today and we even did a video on them. There's a reason you follow Robert's Rules of Orders. It's so that you have a clean meeting. That's not a lot of yelling back and forth. And also it's so you have open debate and open discussion. And a lot of that got shut down by some of the mistakes that were made during the meeting.
Well, we came off the rails right out of the gate.
It came off the rails as soon as it was read out and the motion was yelled out.
So that set the tone for what happened.
That set the tone for the next. I actually went back on the video and looked at the time. We had 55 minutes this went on, which, for one of these meetings seems like a lot, but honestly, there was a lot to unpack here. Probably should have gone on a lot longer.
But Josh, through this whole thing, those 55 minutes, we're not talking about the subject matter. It was more about who was going to get to do what, when. It was more about debate of what we were supposed to be doing.
Right.
And we just didn't, we got off the rails.
And it was hard to get to the subject matter. So next up after the motion was our chairman of the Rules Committee, Biff Farrer. He gave a statement. We put out the entire 11 minutes on our Facebook, but we want to just play the introduction just so we can get his view on what was about to happen. And from what I can see, he was kind of right, but let's see what he had to say.
That the standing commission bylaws, I don't think, are being followed. And I want to read the bylaws. It's standing committee bylaws, Rule 6. This is in Section F. Our standing committees are to investigate and study matters, provide information, and to present to the Board of Commissioners. That is in Rule F in the bylaws for our standing committees. Should questions arise to the jurisdiction, it shall be referred to the Rules Committee. That's where I got involved. I had 3, maybe 4 commissioners that called me wondering about this resolution and how a resolution is passing our legislative system. Now, as my duty as chairperson, I need to make everyone aware of its authority, which I just have, and the areas of jurisdiction. Now, being so, this is somewhat my opinion, and then we can follow up with other commissioners' comments, but resolutions should not replace our legislative processes. Should not replace our legislative processes. That means we should be using our standing committees to discuss and debate. Now, the problem with that is, and there's 3, it diminishes discussion and debate. The substituted resolution is driven by an administrative office or others that we're not sure who they are. And then you've got the resolution being written up on the whims and wishes of somebody else that may not even be a commissioner. I've got problems with all of that. And as some of the gentlemen in the audience said, the resolutions run contrary to our democratic processes of transparent government. So,
all right. So he said a lot there. A couple of the keys right at the end: transparent government. I mean, that's what we're looking for at the end of the day. And he also mentioned in there a limiting of debate, and that's what we had a lot of Tuesday night. Different little things you may not notice if you don't go to a lot of these meetings. Happen behind the scenes as far as a little twist here, Robert's rule, a little twist there, and all together they came together and they limited debate. He's the chairman of the Rules Committee. He just sat there and said he feels like the rules are being violated. We had the county attorney was sitting in that meeting. We had the chairman at that meeting, and neither of them nor anyone else on the floor addressed whether he was right or not about the rules.
And he gave a way out.
Right.
He came back after this statement and said, I got a way we can fix this.
He offered a simple solution to this. He offered an amendment. It would have, cleared up all of the questions that he had, the question that the commissioners had, the questions that the people in the audience had who were their constituents. But it got, voted down. But it honestly, it didn't get voted down. It got a 50-50 vote.
Right.
Which in that case of a 50-50, the chairman has the option to break that vote and could have voted with the chairman of the Rules Committee and moved forward with his amendment, but chose not to. Again, didn't choose to speak on his questions on the rules. County attorney didn't choose to make a statement. He could have made a ruling on the rules at that point. He could have said, that Commissioner Farrer was wrong and that this rule applied and this one didn't, but literally nothing was said. We moved straight into voting on Commissioner Farrer's amendment without any discussion of what actually he was talking about as far as rules and whatnot. And that's one of the key areas where debate got stifled at this meeting is Robert's rules specifically allows, and actually I happen to bring a copy of Robert's rules here. Robert's rules, newly revised 12th edition from 2020, current version. It says that an amendment to a motion, A, must be seconded, and B, is debatable whenever the motion to which it is applied is debatable. So they had a motion on the floor. The motion was to borrow the $10.4 million. Commissioner Fair offered a amendment to that motion, which would have cleared up all the questions that a lot of people had.
Right. This was the chance.
This was the chance
right.
to debate what Commissioner Fair said, and it got shut down. And it didn't just get kind of shut down; it got shut down hard by another commissioner raising their voice, calling a point of order, which is point of order is appropriate if there's a major rule being violated. You
Right.
can speak up even over another commissioner and call it. But if you're going to call a point of order, you better make sure you know the rules and call a correct point of order. And that's not what happened, but we're going to go ahead and play the clip so you can see exactly what happened as the amendment was trying to be brought forth by Commissioner Fair.
Okay.
To him was he did not accept that, so we're going to have a vote. And Bill seconded that. So right. And then Linda was the second on the original motion. So the original motion on the floor is to go forward. Okay, Commissioner Neely.
My question to that would be, in the past, any motions that I've been associated with. if
Point of
there's
order,
an
Mr. Chairman,
amendment-
point of order. His
There's-
motion does not allow for debate. We are strictly on yes and no vote. There is no debate.
Okay, so hold tight. Right now, the amended motion on the floor and has a second, but is not accepted by the primary main motion, so we're going to need to vote.
Well, then I'll call a
Okay.
point of order to put in what I think needs to be said.
Okay, but right now, we got a motion, and we got to vote this motion up or down. If this doesn't go, then you can offer another amendment. Am I correct? Okay.
All right. Again, what you had there was Commissioner Fair issued tried to bring forward an
Right.
amendment to the motion on the floor. That was the opportunity to debate that. And the chair even looked at the parliamentarian and said, hey, are we allowed? I mean, he looked over at him and said, am I correct? Are we allowed to have debate? And was told no. I mean, we just read it out of Robert's rules. If there's an amendment on the floor, you can debate just the amendment. You can't debate the original motion, but there should have been discussion of the rules that Commissioner Fair said were being
Right.
broken. And again, this is just, a procedural thing, but it's a way that a certain group of people in that meeting were able to shut down debate by another group of people, which is why you have Robert's rules, so that kind of thing doesn't happen.
People make mistakes, and Robert's
Right.
rules get somewhat complex.
Right.
But there were several opportunities to reverse course and correct.
Right. And that didn't happen. And we're not going to play it today, but if you go on our Facebook page, we put up a little clip from 11 months ago where we had a budget debate, and two of the specific rules that got just blown all to pieces
Right.
Tuesday night were followed perfectly in June
Right.
of 2023. So we can't use the excuse of, I don't know, we got an old copy of the Robert's Rules book, or we
Yeah,
forgot, or the dog ate my homework. I mean,
Yeah.
in 11 months, you don't forget how the rules work. I think, everybody there kind of should have known how the rules work. And that's actually how I first realized that there were some rules violations. I had been at that June 2023 meeting, saw how one of the items was handled at that meeting, saw the difference in this meeting, actually went out and bought Robert's Rules on Amazon. And that's how I came across the fact that three of them were pretty much blown all to pieces here.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the emotion of being passionate about a cause or the projects that were here sometimes override the actual rules and regulations about how you get there.
That's what you had. There was a lot of emotion in this meeting. You had two clearly defined sides. I heard somebody say that there's almost a line drawn right down the middle of this commission right now. And if you look at the photo collage that we put out this week, and then the other thing that we put out from June, it's the exact same commissioners on either side of this imaginary line right now. And that's really unfortunate, because they're all 18 supposed to be there to represent us, their constituents in the community. So, so from there, it didn't get any better. I don't really want to rehash the specifics of what got approved and what didn't. I mean, it got approved. At this point, there's no unapproving it. Right. I mean, there's nothing. It's voted in. It's the law now.
Well,
They've already. I heard at the. I watched the school board meeting. They've already signed the contract on the Liberty expansion. I mean, the contract for the $10.4 million. I think they mentioned it had a closing first week of June.
So that's coming up
so
soon.
It's done. All this is done.
It's, this reminds me of Obamacare when it came out.
Right.
It was like stacked this high. Now, this wasn't stacked that high, but it was like you got to vote on it and then we're going to get to the bottom line later.
Right.
So we don't know exactly how much is going to be borrowed at this point.
We don't, and that's a good point. We should mention some of that. I've read a lot. Obviously, there's been a ton of comments on Facebook,
Sure.
and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, these projects weren't bid. We're going to just spend this money." All of these projects will get bids.
Right.
All of we're not going out and spending $600,000 on the surplus building. All of these are going out for bid eventually. The point a lot of the commissioners made, and some of the points we've been making is, they should have gone out for bid before this meeting.
Before you borrow the money,
Before you
find
borrow
out
the
how
money.
much you really need.
Instead, we borrowed the money, and now we're later going to find out. And I've seen some comments that like, "Oh, Jeff Sweeney's going to build all these personally." You know, that's not how any of this works.
Jeff
all this
is the
going
manager.
out.
He's watching.
All of this is going out for bids. These will have competitive bids. We'll only spend the amount of, whatever the bid committee or the lowest bid ends up coming in at. But it was the process that we got all
that was the
convoluted.
entire
that was the whole
issue, I think.
And actually, the one thing that did go through the process correctly, just want to point out, was Liberty School. They put it out for bid February 18th. They chose the lowest bid on March 11th. So as we can see from that one, there was time to do the process correctly.
Right.
So after all this went down, obviously there was a lot of talk on Facebook.
Sure.
We put some posts out. A lot of people put a lot of comments out, and the county put out a press release on their Facebook page. And I want to read a little bit of it, and then just give a little bit of. We posted some feedback on it, but I just want to read a couple points off it. Says, for the record, the request before the commission Tuesday night was a financial management matter to borrow money and had been approved by the Financial Management Committee on April 23rd. The suggestion that the item resolution before the commission had not been before a committee is inaccurate. That was my first point that I made on Facebook. I don't think anybody is saying that this particular resolution didn't go through any committee.
Right.
The big concern, and what was raised by both constituents and commissioners on the floor, is that it went through a single committee, finance, yet contained a bundle inside it of multiple projects, and those projects had never come to an actual vote or recommendation from any of the subcommittees.
Right.
It had law enforcement items in it that had never been seen by the law enforcement committee. It had building projects that had been discussed but never forwarded by the property committee. And actually a point that kind of I think has gotten overlooked a little bit, if you watch all of Commissioner Farrer's statement, it wasn't just this one resolution that got passed through financial management. There were 2 other roads bills on this agenda, and there was the body scanner project on the agenda.
Right.
That, in his words, and I don't know any idea how long he's been on the commission. It seems like a while.
25 years. Probably.
He's been there a while.
Yeah,
he's seen how it's done.
Right.
And he says year after year, there's a particular process that the commission goes through to move these. They go through the rules committee. The rules committee puts them on the agenda. They're voted on. And basically a certain group, again, of individuals have decided we're going to give the finger to the rest of the commission.
Yeah.
We're going to run it through the financial management committee where we're not going to have any discussion of it and put it on the agenda because, again, there's this kind of imaginary line that's been drawn here, and you've got commissioners that are in the inner circle and you got commissioners that are outside the circle. And if you're not in the circle, you're not getting all the information. You're not getting all the love. You're not getting all the, the quotes and it's certain people are saying things that others
Here's
aren't.
what's happening, Josh. You're circumventing about 2/3 of your commission when you do that.
Right.
And in process of doing that, you're circumventing 2/3 of your public.
That's true. Yeah. Because each of these commissioners that didn't get the information that the other ones did, they represent a portion of our county.
They're supposed to.
So going on with the statement for the county. Furthermore, on the September 12, 2023 County Commission agenda, there was the request to authorize the design and cost analysis phase specifically for Liberty School, Juvenile Detention Center, and a surplus property facility, which passed 16-0 with 2 absent. That is an accurate statement, but there's a little bit to unpack there. Let's roll our next clip and look at what actually happened on September 12th. We've showed this before, but let's remind people what happened on that day.
Under financial management's design and cost analysis phase for the Liberty School expansion, the Juvenile Detention Center, and the surplus property facility. This would just be the action to allow these to go through that phase so we have the information. This is not an authorization to borrow money. That will still have to come back to this body. This is to get it where we know what the cost would look like.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion second. Now we're open for discussion. Okay, hearing none, seeing none. When your name's called, vote for or against.
Okay, so that was the 40 whole seconds that this took up in the September 12th agenda. As was stated there on the video and was stated in the press release, this was an approval for design and cost analysis. Juvenile Detention Center, they have now just recently a final design, no bids. It has an estimate from a county employee. Mr. Sweeney has estimated what he thinks it's going to cost. Yeah, which was $6 million, which we're told. I've actually not seen where he put that in writing himself, but I'm sure he did. And then the surplus property facility, again, I've not seen any design. We saw an initial cost analysis, again, from Mr. Sweeney, not a bid, of $287,000. No follow-up number until it showed up at the Financial Management Committee 3 weeks ago at $600,000 with no explanation of how it got there. Yeah. And this was not 3 years that it doubled in price. This was 6 months. Yeah, this was a few months that it doubled in price. So on that September 12th vote, when I hear cost analysis, I think, hey, it's going to come back with some bids. Right. We're going to have some hard numbers. We're going to know. I mean, that's a vague term, cost analysis, but I would assume, hey, we're going to hear about this again. Obviously there was no debate on September 12th. So you would think, hey, it's going to come back to us. We're going to get to debate this. We're going to get to discuss this. And let's look at the meeting a week following and hear kind of what the mayor had to say about whether it would be back and how it might reappear.
More that the quotes of what they thought the building was going to cost was enormous, and they thought we'd be better off to keep it where it was. And
and you'll still have that option. And I was going to that'll blend right into what I was going to, if you're okay with it, because it's related to this. As you know, the commission, you were not able to attend, but the commission was unanimous. That was present, 16 of you, to go forward with juvenile detention, the Liberty School expansion, and to put the process in place for a small surplus facility. Now, at any point, these don't pencil out, if that's the way to think about it, because this phase is the due diligence, the cost, what would it look like, what do we see it, where would it be? If anything falls out during that process, it's still got to go back to the commission before the funding that would actually let the projects go. Now,
okay. All right. So as we heard at that meeting, and a little bit was referred to at September 12th, they were expecting costs to come back. It was going to circle back around. And if the numbers didn't work, there could be debate, there could be question. Never came back before a subcommittee with actual costs. Now, I will say they presented initial plans of only the juvenile facility. Initial plans went back in front of the property committee. We showed some clips of those a few weeks ago, I believe in February. Not the final plan. No cost analysis went back before them, other than the fact that, as we showed in some clips, Mr. Sweeney said that he had initial estimates in the $5 million range. They were cutting square footage, which they hoped would reduce costs. And instead, we cut square footage.
Because I think the last number the commission as a whole heard was probably $4 million.
Right.
And then they came in with $5 million, and then we're going to try to get that down.
Going to try to trim that down, which you would assume if we're at 5, we'll trim it down. We're going to come back in the 4s, not in the 6s. So that was that's kind of what happened. Again, we've put a lot of this on our Facebook page, so I hate to, regurgitate clips. We've showed a lot. At the end of the debate around that 55-minute mark, there was, again, a yelling out of a improper motion to call the question without a second. And then there should have been a 2/3 vote, as happened in June of 2023. There was not. There was a request from the chairman to raise your hand and see if 10 people raised their hands. 10 people is not 2/3. And the question actually is supposed to be posed: do we have 2/3 that would like to stop debate? And it should be done by a roll call as well. So just totally out of order.
Well, we're just off the rails from the start.
We were off the rails, and we stayed off the rails, and I don't know, what was going on with that.
So basically, no debate. Let's vote.
Let's vote. Yeah. Well, and again, to be fair, there was 55 minutes of some debate,
Right.
but we
it
didn't
was
get in
not
all,
about the substance really.
yeah, we missed a lot of substance. And again, because we had 5 individual things bundled into this bundle, you couldn't really dig into the surplus building.
Right.
I mean, it was mentioned once or twice. Same thing with the juvenile facility. We had a commissioner that, that went on the floor and stated that they've been on the juvenile committee and that they looked at it for years and that the numbers worked out to where it was cheaper to build our own facility. You had another commissioner that said, hey, wait a second, your numbers were wrong. Here's the correct numbers. But again, no real debate there. They both just laid out aside. And, if you didn't have those numbers yourself, how could you say which of them was right at that point? And without enough debate and, handouts. And
the way I see this whole thing, Josh, out of those 5 different projects, Liberty School is going to get started. That's a positive.
Yeah.
And the soil conservation office that we lease out to the state, that office complex is getting built. And there was a gentleman that made a presentation about that, public comment, and obviously they need it for that, and that's getting done. So those two things, I don't think would have been much debate.
No,
it's
there
the
wasn't
other
much
3.
Debate. It was the other 3, and again, there was just not proper time for debate, and there was time. They could have stayed and debated, but the way that things were handled, debate was stifled, and it sure seemed, from the outside that it may have been intentionally stifled, but it's hard. You can't call motives on what somebody does. Sure. It may just have been ineptitude versus, actual, going out and trying to stifle things.
Yeah, but got lost in the moment.
Could have got lost. Could have been a lot of emotion. There's no telling what that was. So at this point, here we are. I mean, we've got it. It's a done deal. There's no. I mean, technically, I guess you could go back and obviously, there's not enough people that were against it. You're going to go back and revote this issue. So it's coming. Of those 5, the biggest one, and the one that really should have been debated by itself, the $6 million for that juvenile detention center, just aside from the $6 million, at this point, we've basically committed ourselves to, I mean, by the time you build a building, you're committed to 20 more years of us being in the juvenile detention business.
Right.
Yeah. Now, once the building's built, you're not going to get out of that business. You've just spent $6 million taxpayer dollars. So there's no debating that, at least till well after you and I are out of the out of the following the meetings business.
Josh, the way I look at this whole thing, there was no winners or losers here. I think that the public lost a little bit. Our public lost because there wasn't really good representation at this particular meeting, and I think moving forward, we've just got to figure out how this needs to work.
We do.
Forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that need to be changed. I think we need to clean up some of these meetings to where we're not yelling at each other, yelling on top of another commissioner. So much that could have been done better at this meeting that unfortunately wasn't. So
it is what it is, and we have to move on. And I'm just anxious now to see what happens with some of this vacant property now. I mean, we're going to have a building that's going to be replaced over here, another 2, probably a building and a half over here. So what happens with that?
Sure.
There's a process that needs to take place.
There's a process. Hopefully it goes through the right process and goes through the property committee and doesn't end up back on a commission agenda in another couple months. So there'll be more unhappy people out there for sure.
Well, I'm hoping that everybody will see the errors that were made here and correct it and do the next steps properly. That's our hope.
So, and other than that, in the county and the city, that was enough, honestly, for me this week. I will say just a couple small things that happened. We noticed the other day North Britain Street is back open.
Right,
that has been closed for how long? Years, couple years at least.
And we've got another coffee shop.
And there's another coffee shop coming. If you didn't see our post, which a lot of people did, we've got a
35,000 people.
Yeah, I saw that post.
I think there was 25,000 comments, and a lot of them, Josh. One in particular, just like. I had to turn my head sideways. I think some people think Shelbyville now is Shelbyville government.
Yeah,
and those people think that the government is the ones bringing the coffee shops,
and they want us to bring them an Aldi and not a coffee shop. We have no control. The city has no control. These are private businesses.
Yes, and I got to understand, a government does not take care of everything that we need. Okay,
right?
They are there to keep order and have regulations and follow the rules and give us our infrastructure. Private business is private business.
Private business.
And if people don't want to take a chance by starting a business in Shelbyville or Bedford County, that's their choice. Now, if somebody out there wants an Aldi, they should call Aldi and say, hey, I would like to build one over here. Is there like a franchise, or you guys need to come over here and check it out? Right. And I'm sure that there's recruiters out there trying to get our retail in, and we just got to have things in order for these companies to come in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, actually, the city has a contract. I believe it's called Retail Strategies. They're out there looking for businesses to come to town, and I'd love an Aldi. I go to Aldi. I have to drive to Murfreesboro like everybody else does, or you go to Tullahoma. I go to Murfreesboro. But, they're private businesses. The government does not go in and grab an Aldi off the shelf and stick it down on a corner in town. So,
I want everybody to understand. We're just telling you guys about it. We're not the ones doing it.
We're not bringing them to you. So, so at this point, I think let's hear from our sponsor one more time, and then we'll go into a quick coverage of what's coming up in the upcoming week.
With the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since 1988.
Welcome back in here, and we want to thank people for tuning in this morning to watch the weekend wrap up. And we noticed everybody that's on chat, we're up against a time constraint of sorts and don't want to go too long, but we do want to make some comments that have come out here. One particular, Steve Jordan, why can't the meetings be at a more friendly time for the public? That's a good question, and that topic has been brought up. A lot of these committee meetings are at 5 o'clock, and even for some commissioners, unless they work for the county, they're not able to get to work because their work time sometimes is at 5, 5:30, or 6. Some people work late.
I will point out that Tuesday meeting was actually at 7 o'clock. So the main county meeting of the month does happen at a time that you can show up.
Now the committees is probably
committees are at 5, and obviously the one that's always been a bone of contention with people's financial management meets at 4:15. Which, if anybody has a regular job, 4:15 is a hard meeting to get to for sure. So, city meetings are at 6. That's a little harder, but at least they're trying there. They're trying to be in the evening.
And remember this: they're online. There are live streams, and we're going to do a better job of getting this rebroadcasted on Shelbyville now, so that we can see some of these important meetings, and it's on Facebook, because YouTube is where all the other streams are.
Actually, that meeting we just had, we looked into that. The meeting that just happened at the county, 225 people have seen that on YouTube, and that doesn't mean they saw the whole meeting. As those metrics are, they watch. It's either 30 or 60 seconds is all they had to watch. But we restreamed on Facebook, and 1,300 people saw a portion of it.
And there was a good number of folks that stayed through the entire process
and commented
and voice their concern. But I think that as we go forward and more people see this on Facebook and realize it's on YouTube, we just want people to be aware of what's going on. Get out there and get involved. That's what we need at the local level here.
Yeah, if you want your commissioners, your city councilmen to listen to what you have to say, part of it is the transparency that we're trying to bring. And part of it is people standing up and speaking out. They don't know if you post a comment on a Facebook, you can't think that your 18 county commissioners are going to see your comment on Facebook. You've got to actually show up at a meeting, say something. If you can't make it to a meeting, their email addresses are all online. There's a number of ways to reach out and make your voice heard.
One other comment, Shell Rollins. Wait, you mean the government isn't conspiring to bombard us with fried chicken and tacos? You are correct. They're not.
Or coffee shops in this case. So, all right, let's get into the upcoming week. We got two big meetings this week. Tuesday evening, unfortunately at 5 p.m., the county standing committees meet on the second floor of the historic courthouse downtown, and there's a smaller meeting room. It's not in the main room. These are the three committees that kind of got bypassed in this process. Partially, at least.
And what are they going to be talking about?
Now, what do you think they'll be talking about Tuesday? I sure hope we'll be having some. This could be some of the debate that probably could have happened this past Tuesday. Honestly, this is where the debate should have taken place on all these issues. We shouldn't have had this mess that we saw Tuesday night and we wouldn't have had the mess if we'd had the debate ahead of time
Right.
in the standing committees, which meet the same Tuesday every month. You could have put it on their agenda
Yes.
before it came out to the main commission.
And
but we
and
didn't.
then half the commission would have known this is coming.
Right.
We've already
Yeah.
talked about it. We're ready.
We're
ready to vote.
Yeah, which is how the
Right.
normal process goes.
Right.
For something to get onto the agenda, normally actually I grabbed that from the bylaws. For an item to be included on the agenda, it shall be submitted to the Rules and Legislative Committee. If the item requires consideration or study, they'll refer it to the appropriate committee. That is the primary. Now, there's 4 other ways for something to get on the agenda, which one they used at this most recent one, which is if it's super urgent, you can have 2 commissioners put it on the agenda.
Right.
And any of the 4 subcommittees, which is what they did with finance in this case, can put anything on the agenda. So they didn't break any law or anything by
Right.
putting it on
So-
the agenda. This
so-
way, they're just breaking the standards and the way
Right.
it's normally done, which saves you from having this kind of a mess that we had.
So there's
Tuesday
an
night.
opportunity to get some clarification with this
Right.
upcoming meeting this
Yeah,
week. Very
Tuesday.
important.
Yeah,
And hopefully that'll happen. And then we also have a big thing happening in the city.
we do. Thursday night at 6:00, City Planning Commission meets. It's going to be a long meeting. Let me just tell you ahead of time. It's a 2-page agenda. But if you live on the west side of town, this is the big development that's been talked about since I think our first big meeting on this was December. Maybe.
Right.
This is the Remington Farms PUD on the swing property behind Justin's. 315 townhomes, 400 single-family homes on, I should have brought my acreage with me. It's not a lot of acreage. I want to say no more than 120, 125 acres.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people in a small area. We actually heard at a planning meeting recently that the city has changed the number that they use to estimate residents per household. The census has been using 2.7,
Right.
and the city realized that's ridiculously low. I think they've
Around
gone-
here it is.
Yeah, around here. So I think we've actually gone to estimating, I want to say 3.6 per household. So due to that times 715, and think how many people
Boy,
are going to be on
I
this
know,
120
I
acres.
know.
I think
Yeah.
I got to do the math because we'll be doing a post about this on Monday. I think if you take everybody that lives in War Trace, everybody that lives in Bell Buckle, everybody that lives in Normandy, and then you double it,
Yeah.
that's how many people
Right.
they're going to put on this little 120 acre
Right.
parcel of property.
And
if the developer
Are they
gets
going
what
to put a
want.
city hall out there?
There's not going to be a city hall. There's not going to be a
Okay.
separate mayor. There's not going to be a
Okay.
separate services of any kind. The developer is offering to donate 1 acre of the property to the fire department if they want to build.
All right, Shell Rollins. Yes, Shell, we did. We discussed that last week on the show, the moratorium on sewer connections on the other
Yes,
side of
we
town.
did.
We brought that up and we got that out right on the front end when
Right.
that first took place. I think we're the one that broke the story on Facebook.
I think so. Yeah. If there was a
And,
little something on the front of the paper, actually, honestly, not to call out our city mayor, but I think he misspoke at the Republican meeting. He mentioned something about it being a 30-day moratorium.
Oh, it's forever.
This is
until
an
it's fixed.
open-ended moratorium
Yeah.
until it's fixed. The actual statement that was given by the head of Shelbyville Power at where it was announced said, I think 8 to 9 months just to
Right.
come up with a plan to fix it. And then depending on how bad the issue is,
Right.
more time beyond that. So,
Okay, and just to bring up again about this meeting that's taking place Thursday night for
Yeah.
the PUD. This is the Planning Commission, which will make a recommendation favorable or unfavorable to
Correct.
the city council. This is not the final vote,
this
but
is not the vote.
this
But
is your Planning Commission speaking.
yeah, and what we found in the past on these, because we've been to a few of them now, if nobody speaks to the planning commission says, everybody seems to be for it, and they pass it unanimously. When it gets to city council, all city council has to look at is the vote of the planning commission, and they say, oh, it passed unanimously. This must be the best thing since
Right.
sliced bread. And they would have a hard time voting it down if the planning commission doesn't have some people that
Yeah.
stand up and speak against
Let's
it.
address one last comment.
Sure.
Stephen Jordan, what kind of strain are we putting on our electrical grid as well as our water sewer with all these additions coming? And I'm going to say this. Water is an issue all over southern Middle Tennessee, and we are putting a strain at all levels everywhere on Duck River.
Oh,
supply-
sure,
water
all the way up
supply.
the river. Yeah,
All the way up
It's
the
not
river.
just
So
us.
it's
Yeah.
a great point. And as we can see, this sewer thing came out of left field. So we got to
That's-
think that that's everywhere.
Yeah, that's a lot of the discussion on the sewer has been if prior to, I think the moratorium came into effect April 22nd. If you had proposed a PUD on the east side of town, April 21st, Shelbyville Power would have said, sure, we have the capacity. And then they get a letter from the state and they're like, oh, no, we don't have the capacity.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
we don't have what we thought we had. So at what point does it become an issue on the west side of town? We don't know that. We rely on the experts at Shelbyville Power.
Yeah.
But, you know,
they sometimes they're just not going to know till it happens.
Sometimes until something happens.
Or the state has their magic wand and figures it out.
When the state steps in, you got to do what the state says.
The traffic study is mentioned here. Will they be reviewing the traffic study? I'm sure they will.
They actually expand. That's why we've been on a delay for so long. The traffic study was redone. I've actually seen the traffic study. The traffic study is not good news if you live on the west side of town.
Right.
I believe the worst of it was Mack Street. The actual number on the traffic study is if they did this development and you live on Mack Street during heavy traffic periods, it could take you 90 seconds to pull out on Union Street was the actual official number. And this is a traffic study paid for by the developer. So,
that will be, I'm sure some light will be shed on that at this meeting. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully there'll be a lot of discussion.
If you can get there, everybody show up.
Absolutely. Now, at the city, unfortunately, they have a 5-person limit, so they're going to only let 5 people speak. But even if you don't get to speak, just the fact that there's a bunch of people sitting there lets them know, hey, these people aren't here because they enjoy what we're doing. They're using a weeknight of their time to come out here and let us know.
And it's not going to be live streamed.
No, that's another bad thing about playing. It's not live streamed. If you don't go,
we need to have that live stream somehow.
Yeah, I wish they would.
Hopefully we can get there.
Yeah, that's actually a staffing issue at the city. They've only got one IT person for the whole city, so that's kind of.
I bet they could get a volunteer to do that.
Maybe so. I don't know that the IT guy wants him touching his equipment. So.
Well, Josh, thanks for all your hard work this past week. I know you've spent many hours going through all the details here and trying to inform everybody accurately and hopefully unbiased. And I mean, we have personal opinions on all this stuff.
I'm going to push back on the unbiased a little bit. We are clearly, and I don't think we would shy away from this. We are clearly conservatives.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not going to, and we try to, we're trying to put the truth out there, but we definitely have a conservative bias, and that's just what we are. Yeah. So we're not going to pretend to be liberals. We're not going to pretend to be
I don't think we can even fake it, Josh.
I don't think we can fake being liberals. So we're definitely conservative. And if you're looking for a show that doesn't have a conservative bias, that's probably.
And on that light note, we want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning. Be on the lookout for us next week, same time, same place, with the Weekend Wrap